Hello and welcome back to OT, the podcast. We're here to talk about watches, time, and how to spend it. I'm Eddie Green.
I'm Felix Schultz.
How you going, Felix? How's this week been treating you?
Oh, it's been a good, end of the financial year down here in Australia. I don't know. So really, it's been like all the other weeks for me. How about you, Andy? What have you been up to?
Fascinating stuff. Yeah, it's been good. I've been watching Dark Matter on Apple TV. Ooh. Every time they peel me, or I try to peel myself away from that Apple TV subscription, which is vaguely bad value.
On the radar.
It's just they just drop something that keeps you there, and you go.
It's like they know, isn't it?
They've got the timing figured out, and then I'm going to finish this, and I know Severance 2 is going to come, and then they've got me in perpetuity. And to be honest, as long as they keep making good shows, I'll probably stay. But Dark Matter. Are you across it?
I've seen a trailer. Is it what's his name? The Aussie guy.
Egerton.
I think
it's Egerton. I like to call him Egerton.
Teddy Baltieri?
Yeah, it's one of those names that you probably have never said it out loud.
Egerton. I'd say Egerton. I'm confidently saying Egerton.
Edgytown. What's his first name?
Joel? Chris?
Yep. It's one of them. Joel?
Yeah. Sam Worthington.
No, it's not Sam Worthington. Joel Egerton.
Jesus, I hate this. It hurts me inside. I really like Mr. Edgytown. He's a good, solid actor. He's been in lots of my favourite cinematic works.
Yeah, so this is on Apple TV, as I mentioned. It is. I think this is just the first series, and it's a sci-fi series. You've not looked at it at all.
I've seen like The Thing show up on my TV, and I'm like, let's move on from that.
It's worth it. It's worth a dabble. Episode 4,
yeah,
and
okay.
it was like a little slow, a touch slow for me at the start, and then it sort of gained enough momentum, and it was interesting enough, and they've built enough of a foundation that it is actually quite good. You should check it out.
I will. I'm going to do that. Maybe as soon as we get off this call, I'm going to pour myself a cup of tea.
It's got Jennifer Connelly as well, who is my fave from Snowpiercer.
Oh, she's my fave from Labyrinth.
Yeah.
Actually, that's a lie. David Bowie's my favourite from Labyrinth. That's the clear and obvious choice.
Was she in Labyrinth?
Yeah, she was a kid.
Well, famously. That makes sense because she's, I don't know how old she is now.
About that old. She was probably like 10 in 1983 or whatever it was made.
Well, she made it out.
Yeah.
Speaking of the 1980s.
Where are you going with this?
A lot of good watches in the 1980s. IWC had some good watches in the 1980s.
Oh,
here we go. Let's bring it. Yes. Let's kind of work this back.
Bring it back.
Some time ago, I was in Geneva for Watches and Wonders. During that time, I recorded some interviews, some of which you've seen, some you have not seen. Guess what? There's a few more tucked away. We have IWC supporting OT the podcast. They're back, which is amazing. And
yes,
so I caught up with Chris. I caught up with Chris Grainger-Herr. Call him Chris. After kind of catching up, I can call him Chris. In Geneva, at Watches and Wonders, in their, if you'd call it a booth, their arena. Now, this was fun because it was, so there was like a bar and a cafe and then all these different areas, but then there's like basically up a set of stairs, a big open sort of landing. And that's where they wanted to do it, right in the middle of the fair, in the middle of the showcase, up at least 100 people around.
How's the audio quality, Andy?
You tell me, Steve. I think it's pretty good. I think it's okay. He's got people, so people were hushed and quiet, and it was... Yeah, I've not been on the spot like that where it's sort of like we do like public talking, public speaking events and that sort of thing. But this was not that. It was kind of closed but still very open, and you just had to block everyone else around you. Like you're not talking to the people around you.
Yep. Your best friend walks past behind you. You have to be locked on, laser focus to CGH.
Yep. So that was good. Do you want to know what we talked about?
I'm going to guess. Can I make 3 guesses as to what you talked about?
Okay.
Watches.
Yep.
Time.
Yep.
And how to spend it.
Bang on. You're on the right show. Without spoiling the conversation, which we'll cut to probably in 5 minutes when we're done talking about other stuff, it was great. The main thing we talked about was sort of the new collection, obviously, the buzz from the fair, Portugieser, and so on, which is great. A bit of market chat. But the big one was the question I danced around, the Mercedes partnership and what that sort of could look like or how that's kind of going to evolve. That's it. That's the teaser. Listen to what he has to say.
I haven't heard this either, so I'll be coming in as excited as everyone else listening at home and enjoying an actual atmosphere track of, what it's like to be in the IWC booth in Geneva.
Exactly. And so IWC is owned by Richemont. Do you know who owns a little bit more Richemont? Let me do it.
No. It's great, but we've got to do the thing. We've got to link it up in the show notes. Head to IWC.com. Check out there, specifically their Australian Instagram for some localized content. We'll probably link up the global as well. But Aussies, if you want some fair dinkum IWC, head to IWC Watches _Oz_NZ.
Some of the wrists might even look familiar. Some of the photos might look familiar.
Maybe.
So, as I said before you interrupted my brilliant segue,
I'm going to make it even better. I mean, it's the anticipation. People thought they knew what was coming. Then we did a zig, and now you're going to zag back to it.
We're zagging back. Okay. Richemont own IWC.
Surely do.
Do you know who owns a little bit of Richemont after some recent news came out?
Oh, I do, because everyone's been talking about it. A private stake from none other than Bernard Arnault, perhaps the richest man in the world.
Well, I think he's number 3 now.
I mean, Elon's probably going to tank himself within the time of this coming out.
Yeah, it's interesting. So it's a personal acquisition, which is why the regulators don't seem to be too worried, and it seems to be above board. It's a pretty minor stake. I think it's very, very minor.
Rumoured like 2%.
It's small, and it's interesting because Rupert, who owns,
Johann Rupert.
Johann Rupert. Yep. He owns like 12% or 11%, but controls 51% of the business. So somehow has kind of diluted his ownership down, but still remains in control. So it's not a threat. So he's basically built up the business to be protected from sort of hostile takeover situations. Okay. So then you go, there's probably not anything synergistic happening. There's probably not a takeover happening. Does he just think that Richemont is a good business and he'll get a good return from it? And he's sort of hedging his bets.
He's also, were there also comments made at the start of the year about Cartier? Like he said something about Cartier, like his admiration for how they're running at the moment.
I mean,
I don't know.
I mean, you'd be a liar if you didn't admire or say that you admired Cartier and how they've done over the last few years in particular. So,
I've watched enough Succession and listened to enough podcasts. Apparently we should all be listening to the LVMH Acquired podcast. I still haven't done that, to realise that there is shenanigans afoot constantly. There's, there'll be scheming and,
Absolutely. And just when you think a deal's going to go through, it might, the regulators might get involved. But that's a good point. If you do have a take on this, join our Discord. You can tell us there. You can join the ever-growing, ever-chatting community on our Discord, which is going to be linked in the show notes.
Some of them, honestly, they're bringing a lot more to the conversation than me and possibly you, because, look, we're watch guys. I'm not a finance guy.
Oh, we're pretty pilot-heavy in the old Discord at the moment. A lot of aviation. It's...
Yes, shout out to Breitling's recent, sort of squad-based watches, helped out along the way, I think, by Christian, who's in our Discord. You can ask him all the probing questions should you join. Hey, I think this sort of got swept under the rug of the Richemont acquisition. LVMH actively acquired something else in the last week or so.
Tell me about it.
Le Pay, what's
that?
Oh, God, I'm going to not... It's like Le Pay 1839. So you will know their work. You might not know them as a brand, but they make clocks, essentially, which aren't necessarily cool, except when they make the clocks for, like, MB&F.
Yeah,
so
they've
all
got
those big...
Yeah, like the rocket ships, the grenades, the gun, the cars. They're very expensive.
Yeah, so it's them. If you want like big clock, as far as I understand the Swiss industry, they're the main sort of provider for like cool partnerships for clock things, and Rouge do the music side of things. So it's an interesting acquisition because there's value in the brand probably, but also value in the brand's like network and like who, a lot of their income is through, working with others. So What do you think about this, Andy Green?
I'm curious. I want to know what they're going to do with it, because LVMH is for the most part, consumer good, like luxury consumer goods.
Yep.
And they're a volume brand. Like even Hublot does, big numbers now. I don't know, maybe 100,000 watches a year. And then you've got Tag Heuer and Zenith who probably do the least amount, and that's probably not by choice.
Oh, Tag Heuer would do lots.
Tag Heuer would be massive, but Zenith would be probably pretty low, and like I said, not by choice. They'd probably like to do more. So a little part of me hopes that maybe they'll be able to scale things and change the price point. I think Lepay's biggest challenge is scale, and personally, I look at it and I go, this stuff is so cool. I would love it if I was ever going to get like a really nice office and achieve that like a dream office situation, have it on my desk or on the thing. But then you see the price point and it's 30 to 100, hundreds of thousands of dollars. It's like those nice wall clocks where you kind of, when you can't wear it, all of a sudden the value proposition changes. So
what if, counterpoint, what if that really nice sort of modern, sleek sort of objet d'art time-telling clock thing was in Tiffany blue?
Well, maybe. I mean, or it was a travel clock.
LV monogram.
No, maybe it was a travel clock.
And it was available in their extensive boutique network to their hordes of, fans. I don't know.
It's possible, but even then, the price point is above. Like it's so above. Like the cheapest Lepay thing would not line up to the Louis Vuitton catalog.
But I reckon they're buying it for the expertise and the infrastructure. Like if we want to be able to make high end clocks, these are the guys to do it. Why don't we just buy them? Or I could not know what I'm talking about because
Yeah, maybe. I mean, did you see the Asham Hublot? The teardrop thing?
Yes, I did. I was one of my favourite Hublots in recent times.
It's one of my favourite pocket watches in recent times.
Since the 1900s.
Since 1889, whenever it was. Anyway, enough chit-chatter.
One more thing. You talked about Zeniths. We got a chance to see some Zeniths the other day and some Hublots, not the Asham one, sadly. But we did get to see a Song Blue and a Depeche Mode, which is always lovely. We were out at Kennedy.
Local retailer here in Australia.
Yeah, in Melbourne.
Abroad. They're everywhere, all over the country. We're lucky enough to do a little event with them, talk through a bunch of the new Watches and Wonders pieces.
It's just on that topic.
Yeah, well, I guess we're at that point mid-year where it's been sort of 3 months since the fair and a lot of the stock's being delivered. Or at least they're showing off carnet pieces to kind of get orders in and get people interested. So it's weird when there's the big fair and then there's like quite a quiet period and then
everything hits the market.
So a lot of them have well and truly hit the market. It was really cool to see, and we've got more of those coming up.
Tudor Monogram was really great, and some of that other stuff. The Zeniths were nice. That Zenith diver, the extreme diver, was really cool. But anyway. Enough of that. Thank you, Kennedy, for having us as well. Andy, do you want to introduce the main man of the hour?
Well, I feel like I have. I feel like he needs no introduction. He's a 3-timer on OT the podcast. He's the CEO of IWC Schaffhausen, and he's just a great guy to have on the show. What else is there to say other than let's cut to that? Chris Grainger-Herr, CEO of IWC. Thank you for joining me.
Thank you for having me.
It's a pleasure to meet in person.
Absolutely.
I think you've been an annual guest on the podcast for the last 3 years.
Yeah.
It's great.
Always remote.
Yeah, always remote.
Finally, no lockdown.
Not this year. We're in the IWC booth here at Watches and Wonders. It's jam-packed. You made a joke before we started recording that it was empty. It's just, it's overwhelming, the amount of people in here. The popularity of the brand this year seems to be through the roof. Why do you think it is? Why there's so many people pulsing through the boutique all day?
Well, I think it's fundamentally, of course, it's the product, it's the offering, it's what we're doing this year, really celebrating Portugieser as our core watchmaking DNA watch. And I think it's a watch that's also really of the moment in the sense that as we're coming out of the pandemic, we had this explosion of sports watches, celebration watches, quite colorful things as well. And now we're getting into something which is a little bit more understated, a little bit more classical, but still is dynamic. I think you want to retain this idea of that slightly more casual dynamic. You don't want to go into very heavy retro vintage kind of styling. And I think the Portugieser always retains this idea of the instrument watch. So it has a get up and go kind of feel to it, a bit of sportiness to it. And I think that's really appreciated. And then also, as you can see here, we're opening the whole booth up. We're trying to create this really inviting wide staircase, nice open area pavilion. And I think it really works as an atmosphere that people feel at home here and people come back time and again. It's lovely to see for me. For us, we put our heart and soul into these collections, and to be able to welcome people, to see the product, see the reactions on people's faces, and see them having a good time, it's just the best feeling ever.
It certainly feels alive in here. And I mean, to go back, so the focus for this year is the Portugieser. And I think that's a really interesting point that you bring up. Being the focus of the year, it's still dressy, it's still elegant, but it does retain sort of a larger case and a bit more of a sporty feel. And I find that really interesting because the last big trend in watches with this whole sporty luxury thing, which may have been dictated by the pandemic, rubber straps and being comfortable and wearing jeans and sneakers and bringing sneakers, that sort of vibe. And
now
so
we're all in New Balance, see this.
Exactly.
Swifties.
Exactly. But why was the Portugieser line chosen to be the focus of this year?
Well, in long term, it always has to do with our movement development, which is like a 10-year horizon. So you kind of have a framework that you're working to when eternal calendar, tourbillon, hand-on, day and night. The things that are coming, they're kind of set in a longer perspective. But then when you come into a 3-year horizon, you start to figure out what you're going to do with it in terms of creating a collection out of it. And it was really clear for us from the beginning, though. So first of all, we want to make that point again about our watchmaking know-how at IWC, and I think we can showcase that here really well. We want to make the next push in perpetual calendars, take that to eternal, all the way to 4,000, secular calendar, 45 million year moon phase accuracy, really make a milestone step there. But at the same time, just really bringing the refinement in the Portugieser core collection, both from the dials, you get these deep lacquered high gloss dial, double box glass construction. It's a watch that retains its face, its DNA, but every element of it is more refined and it just speaks to you a little bit more. And then in the end, also the way that we've chosen the colorways to follow the day. You're wearing the Dune today, this is the obsidian black. You really have striking but still timelessly elegant colors that are not as, I would say expressive, but still give you a real color animation that can enrich the entire line. And that's been the approach, and I think I'm really happy with the fact that we've managed to create something which is really, really wearable. It's quite classic, but at the same time, it gives me an elevation. It gives you a feeling of uplift in the morning. When I put these on now this week for the first time, it's great. You're ready for the day. You never dress wrong with an IWC Portugieser perpetual calendar. You're always ready to go. So I love that element.
Since the statement, I mean, I think back to when I first kind of got into watches and the Portugieser then, so call it 10 years ago, and the Portugieser of today, which I think has been updated a little bit, especially the Portugieser 40, which I love that it exists because when I remember that came out and I was so happy that there was something in that sort of a more wearable size for me. But I think about the journey that it's come in a relatively short period of time. Are you proud of that? Is it like a great achievement?
No, absolutely, because I think exactly that. As we're coming out of an oversized watch trend, there is that case size and proportion topic. But then also in a Portugieser, its DNA is oversized. So you have to retain that kind of instrument look, but still make it wearable. And as you say, you've got a Portugieser automatic 14 now with double box glass, 40mm chronograph. So there are these smaller diameters. And then we really slimmed down, even it's a 44, but slimmed down the case, slimmed down the height in the automatic as well. It wears a lot lighter, but it's still an instrument. You can still see that character. Because if I make a Portugieser 38 dainty watch in complication, we could do all of that, but it loses a little bit that character of being that instrument on your wrist. And that balance is difficult to strike and also to develop, from a classical dress watch to more of a really elevated, refined watch. It's incremental changes, but I'm really happy with the outcome of what we've done now.
Yeah, it doesn't happen overnight. And I think one thing to point out, having gone hands-on a little bit now, is that the case seems to have been refined a little bit to be a bit more ergonomic. So even though the proportions are relatively similar, it does sit and wear a little bit nicer on the wrist.
Yeah. And the Auto 42 is also flatter. So this one has retained its original proportion, but as you say, because of that box glass situation, you have really a much slimmer case side. And then also you have that big opening on the dial, no bezel that restricts it, or the dial comes out at you. And at the same time, you have the biggest ever opening on the back to reduce that case ring size to the absolute minimum. So the full rotor is exposed, the full movement is exposed, and it really lets you appreciate the fact that a 7 days power reserve movement in a perpetual calendar is actually the size of the watch.
Yeah. And I mean, contrasting a case that's been built around a movement or vice versa, which is, something we see all too often.
Yeah.
you sound really proud and happy with this year's releases.
Yeah.
That's fair to say?
Yeah, that's very fair to say.
We got a little bit deep in the keynote earlier, a bit existential with the concept of time.
Yeah.
During the process of the eternal calendar, did that hit you? Did that come?
Yeah.
Yeah? Tell me about it.
No, because, you don't, like on a day-to-day basis, if you're not an astrophysicist,
Yeah.
you don't consider, our tiny, it's not insignificance, but it just is humbling to think about, our galaxy being 100,000 light years across and there being 2 trillion galaxies in the observable universe. And you think that all of these things that we see and observe is just 3 lumps of rock rotating in this huge, seemingly endless solar system. And in the end, it just puts it all into perspective. And you think, first of all, how amazing is it that we as humans can be creative? And we're basically a bunch of atoms contemplating a bunch of atoms and trying to understand a bunch of atoms. And that we have developed in such a short space, the Earth being 4.5 billion years old, humans much younger. And then only really in the last 5,000 years have we started to observe, to make sense, to really process. And then Einstein, 1915, and then, space travel, 1960s, and all of these things that we're now relying on are so recent, and that humanity can make a mechanical timepiece that can capture all of these phenomena of day and night, the lunar cycle, the tropical year, everything we see and understand about the universe, we can condense in a little package of gears and levers, right, that really tracks for thousands of years and millions of years in the case of the moon phase, what's happening around us in natural phenomena, that we're able to do this. And not because it's a functional need, but because we can, and because it showcases our creativity, I think is amazing. And I think we always have to remember that, customers being willing to pay for that, to be part of that journey, to have a watch that is highly emotional, that just brings joy. It's one of the luckiest industries out there.
It's a privilege, yeah.
It's a real privilege, and I cannot overstate how much we appreciate everyone being so much into mechanical watches nowadays. It's a unique opportunity, but it also, I think, reminds us that we have this unique chance on this planet.
Yeah.
Better look after it.
Yeah.
And also, hopefully, contemplating that puts our day-to-day problems maybe in a little bit of perspective.
And make the time here matter.
Yeah.
And I think, you've done a really good job. That's coming from me. Not that it means that much, but I think you've done a really good job leading the brand since, it's been 7 years.
Yeah, almost.
Coming up in 8 years.
Gosh, yeah.
Pushing the brand in a really big way, in a really new direction, and it's exciting. And I mean, again, the presence on the floor here shows how exciting it is. A full booked out keynote shows how exciting it is. It's you can't argue it. And throughout that time, there's been obvious challenges, right? Obviously the pandemic, the economy, all that sort of stuff. And you seem to have done a really good job captaining it. And I want to know, what has kept you sort of positive and going through it and being able to kind of focus on growth and improving and, keeping perspective throughout. Yeah, and again, doing a tough job at the end of the day, right? Leading a whole business.
I think sometimes it's good to come back to, my roots are in creativity, my roots are in architecture. And I think, as I tried to describe from a customer's perspective, at the end of the day, this is a business that thrives on creativity, ingenuity, engineering. It's a passion project. It's people's passion. And I think whatever challenges are getting thrown at us, we saw that during the pandemic.
Yeah.
No matter how tough the day-to-day gets, people want to dream.
Yeah.
People seeking positive vibes. They're looking for expression. They're looking for art. They're looking for self-expression. I mean, you saw even when our entire social life went onto social media, how much there is still this need to express yourself, to make a statement. And I think this is ultimately what drives this entire industry.
Yeah.
It's the ability to use creativity in a way that generates highly emotional products that people can identify with, that people wear on their skin, that creates memories, that creates legacies. And this is the underlying truth that whatever economic wobbles we are looking at, if you stick to that principle of building brand equity by making stuff that's genuinely exciting, creative, and where real human passion is going into a product that is designed to last forever, I think that is the long-term plan you mustn't forget, no matter how agile we need to be in pandemics and all the rest of it. I think as long as you stay true to that and you assemble a team of people who are genuinely passionate about what they're creating. And we have here Marcus Bühler.
You met him earlier. Yeah.
Marcus, he's one of those inventors. If he cracks a problem, he bursts into my office, goes, Chris, we've done it. And he's so excited. And this is exactly what we need and what our customers appreciate at the end of the day, because it's a product that comes from the heart.
Customer first. I want to ask you about the partnership with Mercedes.
Yeah.
We've just wrapped up the Grand Prix in Melbourne not that long ago.
Yeah, thank you for reminding me of that. DNF.
It gets me curious because I go, they've had some big changes, obviously.
Yeah.
And you're a very strong partner with them, and it seems to be a very good partnership.
Yeah.
And so I'm curious to know your plans for that partnership and how you plan on sort of really continuing to grow it and capitalizing on it, because it is such a strong market and the alignment's so good, and it's just such a global partnership.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think it's the longest standing partnership between an automotive brand and a watch brand anywhere. So we've 20 years with AMG, 10 years with the Mercedes-AMG Petronas Formula One team, and we've had an amazing run. If you look at Lewis Hamilton, it's been 10 years of all the title successes, all of the amazing activation opportunities. Lewis has been such a gentleman over the years, really supporting IWC, spending all the time with our customers. It's been amazing. Yeah. But all things have to end, so he's moving on. Fair enough, no problem. And we'll see somebody new coming in. Now, some fresh talent, it'd be changed, but we are 100% committed to the team. You know, we have a long-standing partnership with Mercedes, with Toto, with every element of AMG. And we are one team. And our philosophy, the way we work, clicks so well. Whenever we have any event with Mercedes, people always come back and say, now I understand why you guys work together. There's a natural synergy between the two of us. So yes, teams will change, managers will change over time. Models, cars, technology, electric, combustion, it all changes. But I think the fundamental link between our two brands is very, very strong, and that continues.
I mean, that's a great answer, and I appreciate you answering it, because it's one of those topics, and it just hit me as something. It's like, oh, well, what happens in this scenario? Like, what do you do? Like, it's the team changes, and that happens with sports all over the world.
That's why you sign a team contract and not a contract with drivers and a manager. But I mean, that's part of the game.
Exactly. I think that's a really good perspective to have on it, and probably other partnerships as well. I mean, one thing that I kind of see, and I always sigh, is when you see an ambassador or a partner come on for a year or two, and then they leave, and then somewhere else, and it's about the money. Whereas this seems to be like a genuinely beneficial. And do you think it's a car guys, watch guys relationship? Do you just think it's the right market for both, or is it really the businesses just align on their values?
Yeah, it's mainly that, but it's also the fact that obviously you have a very interesting thing there between the two brands, because there are certain brands both in watches and in cars that are maybe quite specific in terms of customers either liking them, not liking them. And as we have a lot of collectors that have part of their collection IWC or also IWC, you will find that most car collectors or people who are into cars, whatever they like, they also have a G-Class or something at home. So there's often like this very positive sentiment towards Mercedes, whether you are a hardcore Mercedes lover or not. And this is quite unique, because Mercedes is the only car brand. Not only did they invent the car, but they have everything from Formula One to military trucks. So you have a huge range. And that really makes it quite unique as being sort of universal, right? Which I think is very helpful. And then relationship, people who love engineering, who love performance cars, who love off-road cars, who love sort of machines, they also like mechanical watches. So the synergy is just very, very obvious. And then it comes to the alignment of the team and how you tick and what your philosophy is. And it's very funny because you meet teams from all different car brands, but it's just absolutely, you could blind test them and you would find the Mercedes team and the IWC team, we would find each other. Because it's just a certain type of mentality that a certain groundedness, a certain, a sense of like a little bit of fun, there's a tongue-in-cheek kind of element. AMG, some of the things are not that serious either. You get some crazy colors, some crazy engines, some jacked up.
But it's a mindset, right? Like it's an approach. And I say Marcus is 23 years in the business, which is, and I don't know how long you've been at IWC, but it's 17 years. 17, right? In this day and age, people, in their careers, they go somewhere for 2-3 years. It's just and you say you have a lot of people that are really dedicated to the cause and to their work, and it's truly exceptional. And do you know why that is? Like, what keeps these guys so invested in it? And he said to me earlier, he said, I'm never going to leave. No.
Look, I can't pin down all of the elements that come into that, but I noticed in my own journey that I walked into this company in 2005. I remember it clear as day, opening that door back in the day. It was different layout. Meeting the ladies behind the reception desk and falling in love with the people I met and falling in love with being there. And it's never changed. There was not a day in my career at IWC where I didn't come to work full of energy by the people that are there. And we often see that when it gets really stressful and really tough, you see that underneath it all, people really care about the product and that brand and our customers. And this is, I don't know, we don't generate this in a PowerPoint.
Yeah.
It's just, it's a
inherent.
culture thing. And then, there's this old saying that culture beats strategy every day of the week. And I think it's absolutely true because there is a strength in that culture. And I think Watches and Wonders is the best example of that. Because even if you have teams from all different areas of the business that normally have all sorts of friction points in getting stuff done, they come here. I don't have to do a big locker room speech. They're all pulled together and everybody's working on the same thing.
It's amazing.
Hand in hand.
It's truly, I like seeing the interactions of I'm from this market, I'm from that market, I'm in this team.
And we have people, I had it a couple of years ago when I walked into the kitchen and there was a guy from our creative center in the kitchen doing the dishes. He said, I just want to be here. I just want to be part of this. We see this a lot. We have people, people always used to make fun of me back in the day when I was picking up the rubbish or cleaning the floor. And I said, no, we care. This is our house. We care. All of us. It's not about who's where, and we all care and we all make it happen.
All right, my last question. I know you're very busy, middle of the fair. You mentioned that. You mentioned the culture. And as a leader, how do you protect that? How do you make sure that stays? Because it does sound like it's a very core part of your success.
Yeah.
And IWC success. So how do you protect that?
Again, I don't think there's a magic recipe to do it. What I try and do is when I interview people for the job, I never look at CVs ever.
Yep. Okay.
I meet people and I try and understand, do they fit our mentality?
Uh-huh.
Are they the right kind of people? And do they have an understanding of what IWC is? Because the one thing I cannot teach anybody is a feel for the brand. Because we have to be able in our jobs every day to take decisions based on the simple question, is this IWC or is it not? And I can't give you a rule book for that. You have to have a feeling. And you can't put me into any other brand and I'm like, yeah, I can do that.
Yeah.
No. There's brands you naturally understand and other things you don't understand. And this is something that you either bring or I can't give you. And that's how I approach these interviews. And my new chief of staff who's just there, I just read an announcement for her new position. I don't even know the elements of her academic background. I was reading this and double master's. Wow, it's impressive. I didn't even know. Because I try and get a feeling for if people are really in it and if they're the right fit. Yeah. And we just have a new chief operational officer who came from the Sauber Formula 1 team. We have a new chief commercial officer. And they've onboarded so quickly into their roles and they just clicked in. And I think if you find the right kind of people, it's probably the best thing you can do in terms of ensuring that you end up with a culture that's protected, as you say. But magic formula.
Well, that leads to magic results, I guess. Well, thank you for joining me. Congratulations on a very successful fair. I'm hearing nothing but good news about the new collection, and it is lovely. So, well done.
Thank you.
Thanks, man.
Andy, I have a thought. Mm-hmm. Do you think the fact that Chris Grainger-Herr uses like the triple barrel because he works at IWC, like, is it just like a nice little, aligning the business card moment? Do you think that was part of the hiring decision, or is it his experience, leadership skills, and talent in watch management executive positions?
I think, he was born for it. His parents knew. Day one, they said this is the future CEO of IWC Schaffhausen,
or a brand with three names.
Any brand. Well, yes, I think he's living out his destiny. To be honest.
Sure. Yep. It's the only way to explain it.
But again, appreciate IWC Australia for hooking that interview up and being so kind to us and supporting the podcast. Make sure you check out IWC.com and all the socials and bits and pieces that we link up. If you like OT the podcast, get in our Discord and tell us. Leave a review, leave a 5-star comment. Tell your friends, tell your family. Shout it from the rooftops.
Tell your accountant this financial year.
See if they can tax deduct anything for you while you're at it. Until next time, Felix, which I think is next week.
Yes, more RWC down the pipe.
In the pipeline. Yeah, something like that. All right, see you next week.